Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're looking at a story that completely transcends sports. You know, when you hear the name Virat Kohli, your mind probably goes straight to those staggering statistics, the aggressive celebrations, and just sheer dominance on the cricket field. But today, we're not just looking at a timeline of cricket stats. We're looking at a literal blueprint for overcoming massive roadblocks. We're talking about the physical, technical walls we hit in our careers, and those invisible, mental mountains that can just slowly wear us down over time. This is the story of two very distinct peaks of adversity in one of the most heavily scrutinized careers in modern history, and exactly how he conquered them.
Okay, let's dive into this. Every time I was down, every time I hit rock bottom, I put everything aside and worked hard to come back stronger. Now, sure, that sounds like your standard motivational quote, right? But for Kohli, this was a literal survival tactic. Success at the highest level, it doesn't come from some unbroken streak of perfection. It's born from the absolute grit to get back up after completely falling apart. And to really understand that kind of grit, we have to rewind to a time when his entire game just unraveled.
Section 1. The 2014 England Nightmare and hitting a technical wall.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this brutal number. Let me set the scene for you. It's 2014, and Kohli arrives in England as this huge rising star. But he's immediately confronted by the Duke's ball, which is notorious for its vicious swing in English conditions. And suddenly his technique, the very thing that brought him all this international fame, it completely betrays him. He hits an absolute wall. And that results in this number right here, 13.50. I mean, for a batter of his caliber, averaging 13.50 across 10 innings in a 5-test series, that is catastrophic. All that credibility he'd built up just seemingly vanished in a single month.
Just look at this string of scores, single digits and ducks. This is the stark reality of a world-class athlete completely losing his form. He literally didn't cross 40 even once. Every single time he walked out to the crease, he was targeted relentlessly, especially right outside that off stump. He's just repeatedly nicking the ball to the slip fielders. But here's the thing, the root of the problem wasn't just physical.
The root of the problem was heavily psychological too. Looking back on that tour, Kohli actually admitted to being incredibly rigid. He wanted to play his way, on his terms, completely ignoring the conditions. He was just so desperate to succeed, putting this massive weight on his own shoulders because of the different benchmarks placed on subcontinent players when they tour overseas. That rigidity, combined with utter desperation, created this intense, self-inflicted pressure. It led to a severe mental decline. He was constantly anticipating the inswinger, which left him completely out of position to counter the outswinger.
Moving on to Section 2, fixing the flaws and the mechanics of adaptation.
So, Kohli realized a painful truth. Being rigid wasn't going to get him anywhere. If he kept doing the same thing, he was going to remain a pushover in Test cricket. So he didn't just tell himself to try harder, he did a complete surgical restructuring of his mechanics. Let's move to and see how this builds. First, Ravi Shastri advised him to stand outside the crease to meet the ball earlier and kill that swing. Second, he met with Sachin Tendulkar in Mumbai, who drilled into him the importance of a big stride, a forward press against the fast bowlers. And third, he fundamentally changed his stance. He noticed his toe was pointing towards cover point, which was making his hips open way too early. He had to retrain himself to point his toe towards point, keeping his hips side on so his shoulder had room to adjust to the line of the ball.
But, knowing what to fix and actually pulling it off are two entirely different things. Overriding years of muscle memory? That took a brutal physical toll. We're talking batting 3 hours a day to the point of severe forearm cramps. And he did this for 10 days straight. He kind of compared it to golf, how you have to hit a shot 500 times just to perfect it. This was agonizing, pinpoint, precise practice, all aimed at completely rewiring his brain and his body to play in a brand new way.
All right, Section 3, the 2018 redemption and conquering the Duke's ball.
Fast forward 4 years. Kohli returns to England, but this time as captain. He blocks out all those past perceptions and just fully trusts this newly built technique. And wow, contrast that with the 13.50 number we saw earlier. Look at this, 593 runs. He smashed 2 massive hundreds, 3 half-centuries, and completely cemented his place as the top run scorer of the entire 5-match series. He absolutely conquered the very conditions that broke him 4 years prior.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Legendary fast bowler James Anderson, who by the way dismissed Kohli 4 times in 2014, explicitly pointed out this evolution. In 2014, Kohli was desperately chasing that outswinger early on. But in 2018, Anderson said he was a completely different player.
His mental approach and his technique were finally in perfect alignment. He was incredibly patient, he was leaving the ball beautifully, and he just waited for the bowlers to come to him. It was a literal masterclass in adaptation.
Which brings us to Section 4, the weight of the crown and the invisible hurdle.
Because right after conquering the technical side of the sport, a new, completely invisible enemy crept up, suffocating mental burnout. I mean, think about it. For nearly a decade, he carried the expectations of over 1 billion people. That 24/7 scrutiny eventually triggered a massive domino effect. Every move, every time he batted, every single captaincy decision was analyzed to death, until the burden was just too much to carry. Starting in late 2021, he steps down as India's T20 captain. Then he relinquishes the captaincy for his IPL franchise RCB. And finally, by early 2022, he resigns as India's Test captain.
The reality of what was happening behind closed doors is actually pretty heartbreaking. He admitted, "I was trying to fake my intensity." His body and his mind were literally screaming at him to stop, but he kept trying to convince himself to push through. For a guy whose entire brand, whose absolute core identity on the field is built on this natural, unbridled intensity and passion, realizing he was merely pretending to have that fire showed a really profound disconnection from his true self. Mentally, he was just gasping for breath.
Section 5. Embracing mental vulnerability and the 30-day reset.
He had hit a totally different kind of rock bottom. He was waking up without a single drop of excitement to train or practice. He was losing his perspective as a human being because his environment only placed value on his professional identity. So, the crucial point is this. He took a radical step. He said, "For the first time in 10 years, I didn't touch my bat for a month." He completely ghosted his sporting equipment to rediscover who he was outside of the game of cricket. He spent time with his family, he traveled, he gave himself permission to truly de-stress. And when he finally woke up genuinely excited to hit the gym again, he knew the healing process was working.
This realization right here might actually be his most important victory. Trust me, faking to be strong is far worse than that. I'm not feeling any shame that I was feeling mentally weak. Guys, for an athlete globally known for unmatched mental toughness to openly advocate for embracing vulnerability, that is powerful. He totally shattered the illusion that you have to be this unbreakable machine 100% of the time. He urged everyone not to ignore their limits, to talk about their struggles, and to realize that asking for help isn't a weakness, pretending you don't need it is.
Finally, Section 6. The legacy of resilience and intent over perfection.
Kohli's journey proves that true greatness is never a straight upward line. It's a really messy cycle of failing, adapting, burning out, resetting, and coming back. Just look at what happens when you refuse to let the valleys define you. We're talking over 9,200 test runs, hitting 50 ODI centuries to break Sachin Tendulkar's all-time record, over 14,000 ODI runs, and over 8,500 IPL runs. He achieved greatest of his era status, not because he never failed, but because he chose to adapt. He reworked his stance until his forearms cramped, and he stepped away to heal his mind when he needed it most.
And as he says right here, failures will keep happening. You're going to make errors, you're going to get out. But the ultimate life lesson isn't about maintaining some illusion of perfection. It's about ensuring your intent is never in the wrong place. It's about looking at the big picture, analyzing what went wrong, and having the courage to learn from absolutely every rock bottom moment you face. Which leaves us with a pretty critical question for you to reflect on as we wrap up this explainer. Success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about how efficiently and honestly you course correct. So whether it's a technical flaw in your own work or maybe a heavy mental burden you're carrying around, how do you handle your moments of hitting rock bottom? Do you fake your intensity? Or do you step back, adapt, and come back stronger? Keep that in mind the next time you face a hurdle. Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep learning.